Presentation Skills for Design Students, Episode 19. Hello and welcome back to Presentation Skills for Design Students, the podcast dedicated to helping design students everywhere become confident, creative communicators. My name's Christina Canters, and I'm here to help you speak with confidence, create compelling presentations, and communicate your ideas like a ninja. So get ready to take your next presentation to a whole new level. Hi everyone and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. You are going to love this week's episode. It's chock-a-block full of really, really good stuff. I'm interviewing Shah Turner, who's a landscape architect and who runs the 30-Foot Gorilla podcast. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But first off, I just have a quick announcement. I received a tweet the other day from Arpit Daniel Das, and he asked me if I blog about presentation tips. Now, I will be posting some blog posts up on the website at designdrawspeak.com. But I tweeted Arpit back and I told him about the Speak Studio, because all the people who have joined the Speak Studio from the Design Draw Speak website, they receive presentation tips every week that I write. So that's just exclusive content for the people who have signed up to join the Speak Studio. So if you're like Arpit Daniel Das and you are wondering if I write any blog posts about presentation tips, you can join the Speak Studio and you can get more helpful and inspirational little presentation tips and tricks delivered straight to your inbox. So you can just go to designdrawspeak.com/studio and that will take you straight to a page where you can join up there if that's what you would be interested in. Again, that's designdrawspeak.com/studio. Okay, moving on to this week's story from Studio. And this week it is from Ulysses V, who, if you tuned in last week, you may know I actually interviewed him for episode 18 last week. He has so many stories to share, so I just had to ask if he could share a story for this week's episode. So here is Ulysses.
In my final year of university, I signed up for a mentorship program that the university sponsored, and I got connected, luckily, with somebody in the architecture profession, and he wanted to see my portfolio. And I was really harsh on myself as a designer. I think everybody everybody is their best self-critic. And for me, when I was presenting my work to him, he was I was just bashing my work. I'm like, I'm not happy about this. This rendering sucks. This isn't my favorite image and drawing. And he stopped me halfway while I'm presenting my portfolio. And I think he even wanted me to start all over again. And the best thing that he told me is, when you're an architect and you're going to have to present your design to the public, you can't keep, bashing your own design. You have to learn how to sell it. And you can't just, point out the flaws. You're going to have to be a little bit more confident than that. So that kind of helped me eventually learn how to present my projects on my portfolio to prospective employers. And they will give you some mercy for making mistakes, especially if you're a new student. But for me, I had to learn how to, sell my design. So I think that was one of the changing moments as an architecture student. You have to learn how to be confident in presenting your work, even if you have some mistakes. It's never going to be perfect.
Selling your idea. I think it's something that we can all improve on. That's a really great lesson there. So thank you so much to Ulysses for sharing his story with us. Now, I like hearing all your stories. So if you would like to share your story or your own presentation tips with me and with all the other listeners, just go to designdrawspeak.com/story. Okay, now it's time to welcome this week's special guest. And it's the 30-foot gorilla man himself, Shah Turner. Now, Shah is a landscape architect, and he's also tutored landscape architecture at RMIT University in Melbourne. And he runs the 30-Foot Gorilla podcast, which is all about helping designers set up their own businesses. Now, Shah is well aware that to be a good business person, good communication skills are critical. So I was very excited to chat with him, and I'm really pleased that I'm able to share his stories and advice with you today. So we talk about really interesting ways to really connect with your audience and to build that rapport with them. And if you stay tuned till the end, Shah has an excellent piece of advice for design students who may be feeling maybe a bit lost in where they fit in the design profession, or for students who feel like they need to be good at everything and to please everyone. He's got some great advice that I really wish I had when I was studying, so I think you may also find it really helpful and also just a bit reassuring. So without further ado, let's get to the interview with the very lovely Shah Turner. Shah Turner, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you have your own podcast as well, which is quite cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called 30-Foot Gorilla. That's a bit of an odd name. Can you share with us what it's all about?
Really? I can absolutely. Yeah, it's a pretty bizarre name, isn't it, when you think about it? It's actually something to do with like growing something big and doing something amazing. The true story behind the name 30-Foot Gorilla is I was giving someone a bit of a hand with their idea for a New Year's Eve party. And one of the things we were doing, it was like this jungle-themed party, and we were trying to work out a way, how can we make a real impact, a real statement, so that when people turned up to this party, they were like, wow, we're here, like we've arrived. Anyway, so I was online Googling all sorts of things, and I came across this website which is called Alibaba. And Alibaba, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's where you can actually purchase a whole bunch of stuff in bulk directly from manufacturers in China. And one of the things I came across while I was looking at this was this giant inflatable gorilla. You know, like a jumping castle?
Wow. Did you have to buy like 500 of them?
No, well, this is the thing. What you can do is just say, I just need a sample because I was thinking about buying 500. Anyway, cut a very long story short, I never got that giant inflatable gorilla for this party, but it kind of stuck with me as I love the kind of beauty of taking this massive kind of crumpled up mass of plasticky black stuff, and that you could kind of breathe life into this thing and it would become something much bigger than what you ever expected it to be. And I think that's part of the thing that I'm doing with this project, which I've named 30-Foot Gorilla, is about taking designers and helping them to grow something really big and something really special. The last thing I want to see is another person who is just so brilliant and so talented falling to the wayside because they couldn't make ends meet, because they didn't have an understanding about business. And that's really what my project, 30-Foot Gorilla, and the 30-Foot Gorilla podcast are really all about.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's a really, really great resource for designers, and for anyone who is listening, who is still studying and they do plan on starting their own practice one day, I definitely recommend that you go check out Shah's podcast. So, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Now, you've also taught at university, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I kind of finished up, I went to RMIT in Melbourne years ago. I think I finished up there in about 2004. And I guess it was kind of a little bit of a follow-on thing because I did my major thesis project there, and I developed quite a good rapport with the other lecturers and that kind of thing. I was actually one of the sort of annoying mature age students that was there, always asking questions when it's time to go, and that kind of thing. And so I actually started being sort of a tutor, and at times also a sessional lecturer in the in landscape architecture.
Okay. Just sticking with that for a second. You know how on the podcast, I don't know if you know, but I like to ask all my interviewees about the two things. Have you heard about the two things?
Yeah, I have. I remember about the two things. Can you just remind me of what they are
Okay, so
right now? Because I actually listened to a few.
it's
Yeah, go on.
based on the idea that any subject or topic can be summed up in just two things, and anything else is either an application of those two things or it's just not important. Now, I did a little exercise with a bunch of Melbourne University students, architecture students, the other week, and I got them to write down their two things about a few topics, and one of them was beards. And one of the responses I got was, one, if you can't grow one, you don't need it, and two, if you can, you do. And I thought that was quite funny.
That's really succinct, isn't it?
Yeah.
True.
So that's exactly
Fact.
what the two things is all about. So one thing I would like to ask you, Shah, what are the two things about guest critics?
Okay. The first thing about guest critics, absolutely, is that they are really genuinely interested in what you have to say. That's the first thing.
Really?
And yeah, that's the first thing.
So many
The
of them look
second
so bored.
I know, don't they? And I think that's the reason why they look so bored is probably because what I'm thinking is the second thing is guest critics are people too. It's really difficult for any two people who have just met for the first time and in the short space of time that you have available to you when you're making a presentation for you to immediately feel like a connection with each other, like a personal connection. And so that's what I think that's the other thing is, the second thing is that recognizing that you're both people too. And I personally believe that all people can find a way to get along with each other. So I would think that the second thing is definitely that if you're able to engage with someone as a person first, before any of the other stuff, before all like your amazing theories and all the stuff you discovered about the site and your solution for the problem that's at hand, is just finding that little bit of a connection first. And then I really think that you bring those two things together. One is that they really want to know about what you've got to say. And second is that they're really looking at you and thinking of you as another, and you're connecting with each other as people. And I think that's really important.
So how would you go about establishing that connection before you actually get into your talk?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because that is something which I have found is absolutely part of the process, which I think that everybody, it's worth considering for everybody to kind of do. There's a couple of things that go on, first of all, whenever we meet new people. And the first of that is actually just getting used to what each other look like and what each other sound like. And in fact, if you come out a little bit too early with the content and the real nitty gritty of what it is that you're talking about, you actually miss that first really important phase, which is just the kind of like, I guess, kind of sizing each other up, sussing each other out, kind of getting used to the person's facial features, the way that their mouth moves when they talk, the kind of intonation that they have, and that sort of thing. And I guess kind of pushing past that, there's an important sort of initial getting to know you. So I kind of think of it as a kind of a psychological thing in the initial stage of getting to know each other really quickly. That's really important for them to then feel comfortable and to be receptive about what it is that you're actually going to be saying to them. So there's a few ways that I've done this in the past. And this has come from my experience actually of while I was studying and I was working for a local nursery in Fitzroy. And I went from being the guy that was carting the pots around and bags of potting mix and stuff through to the guy who was then doing garden maintenance. And then eventually, because I was studying landscape architecture, I started getting the opportunity to go into people's homes and talk to the people who live there about the kinds of things they'd like to achieve in that space. Now, here's a really interesting and weird thing. I'm a 6'4" guy who's now inside your house talking to you about what you'd like to do in your garden. That's a kind of really sudden social circumstance to find yourself in. And I found that what I've needed to do is, and I worked this out really, really quickly, is how do I make this other person really feel quite comfortable with me being in their space? And so I'd do things like I'd look around the place and I'd find something nice to comment on, like, oh, that's a really great painting. Where did you get that from? Or what made you choose that thing? Or this, I love the floors in here. You know, like if you compliment people, it kind of breaks the ice a little bit. If you find something yourself, like if you take it upon your own shoulders to find something for you to talk about and chit chat about, you kind of get through that initial phase I was talking about before, where you're getting used to each other's appearance, you're getting used to each other, the way that you're sort of speaking and that kind of thing. An icebreaker, I suppose. And so I sort of think the same thing applies when, and I found this a time and time again, the same thing applies when you're in that presentation room. You know, you're there, you've got your panels up on the wall, and there's these people sitting in a row there. God, it's such a like tense and bizarre kind of those nerves, you know, at the start. How can you just like take a moment to make each other feel comfortable? And so one of the things, as I was saying about like complementing some of the features inside someone's home that I might take into the presentation scenario at uni is to sort of say, hey, that's a really great, I really love that top that you're wearing. Like, where did you get that? I really love horses, and it's got like horses all over. That's so cool. Yeah, you know, I mean, in some sense, you don't want to overdo it, do you? I mean, you don't want to kind of come across as a bit, that could be taken a bit creepy if you kind of do it in the wrong way.
Yes. Oh, you could do something.
I think that's what
you could also do something like ask them, you know, how are you going? Have you been to many other presentations today already? You know, what do you think of the standard? How's it all going? Just asking them about their day or you know what they enjoy to do. You know, do you come to many of these things?
Exactly, and I think then so that's one thing, and that's the sort of thing which you might do with like your own friends. You know, there's that. If you've got some absolutely massive news and you just can't wait to tell them, obviously you probably dive right into it. But usually you'll observe yourself like that first moment when you're meeting up with some friends or something somewhere. You kind of had that little initial general kind of chit chat. Let's all settle into this next scenario. These circumstances kind of discussion that kind of precedes what you then kind of get into as you hang out. And another thing that you can do as well is look at how is the audience positioned, or in particular the critics, but generally the audience generally, how are they positioned in relation to what's a comfortable sort of sense of intimacy or whatever that you have with your audience before you start. So another thing that can demonstrate confidence between you and the people that you're speaking to, and also I suppose another kind of icebreaker thing is to make sure that people are actually physically sitting in a place which makes you feel comfortable to talk with them. I'm a massive storyteller, so I would often say to people, you know, like, don't be shy. Like, I'd really love it can you just move in? Can I just get you to is that okay? Can you just come this way a little bit? And if you can kind of move over this way a little bit, I just really want to make sure you guys can all see what's on the board behind me. I don't want to be standing in front of it and stuff for you. And, you know, those kinds of things in the initial bit. And what's great about that as well is it kind of, you're actually stealing a bit of time, you know, like, because you don't have that much time to do these presentations. You can kind of use this initial bit to help people get used to you, get used to like, oh, look, his mouth moves kind of weirdly when he says S, and get them used to your voice, get them used to your appearance and your mannerism, and then start to get into your presentation.
And you know what? I just realized this. That would also help you. Because if you are just spending the first even 30 seconds just saying, hey, everyone, can you just move in, blah, 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 you're using your voice and you're actually getting your own voice warmed up before your presentation. Because if you're just silent and you're not saying anything and you're just sitting there watching other people and just going and thinking in your head, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. And then you get up there and you try and be all articulated and deliver this really nicely planned speech, you're going to be feeling really rusty from not actually saying anything. So I think that's a really great way to actually get yourself warmed up before your presentation and get yourself used to speaking.
Yeah. Do you know what about and this isn't right for everyone, because I think that there's, you know, if you take your work seriously and if you value the kind of thing that you spent all this time doing, there's certainly a place for being the very articulate, well-presented person. Sometimes I find that perhaps that might kind of hold you back a little bit from being able to demonstrate how passionate you are about your subject as well. And I suppose most people don't have too much trouble in kind of, I guess what the point I'm saying is there's a certain element in all of this of what I'm kind of wanting to offer here about being yourself. And being yourself is such an important part of, if you are closer to yourself and your own personality and the reasons why you've come to the conclusions that you have with your project, it really helps everything to sort of seamlessly fit together for your personality to shine through your work. I mean, at the end of the day, all of these projects are being done by people, and they're all people's interpretation and understanding of a certain set of circumstances based on their experiences in the world. And so you don't really, I sort of think there's no real need to kind of pretend to be that person that you think you're supposed to be that's presenting this thing, when really it's you that's come up with these brilliant solutions, all along.
And because if you're not authentic, people can sniff that out straight away. They can tell
totally.
if you're not being yourself. And being yourself is also going to help your audience feel more comfortable as well. Because if you be yourself, that's going to make you more comfortable, which then makes your audience more comfortable.
Totally. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that.
That's really cool. So a way that, a way of being really authentic and putting your unique spin on it is to tell stories. And you said so yourself that you like telling stories. What sort of stories would you share with your audience in a presentation?
Just like me personally is actually quite random stories. And you know what? This isn't just me. I'm sure everyone's really familiar with like those TED Talks.
Yes.
You see a lot of people that are presenters at TEDx also doing the same thing. It's a technique on the one hand in terms of, like, as I said before, helping people to acclimatize to your voice and your mannerism. It's a way to allow some of your personality to kind of come through. This typical TEDx formula starts off with, like, tell people like a bit of a story, then you're going to tell them what you're going to tell them about, then you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. But the story idea kind of precedes all this. So I would always, if I thinking back to some of the presentations that I've done before, I would try and pick a story which is related to the subject matter of my project, but in a more kind of day-to-day context. So let's say, for example, I was looking at a project which was addressing the public space, which is on Swanston Street outside QV. So for people who aren't from Melbourne listening to this is like a real central inner city location, almost a precinct these days. Let's say I was doing this project which was out the front of QV. So I might start off my story with, just saying something like, I was just down at QV having my lunch today, and they've got this amazing new Mexican place, and they're doing these new tacos which have got duck on them. I don't know if you guys has there anyone here been to that? You haven't? Oh, you have? Yeah. How good is it? It's so, isn't it delicious? I know. And they give you that sauce and everything. Actually, I kind of spilt some of that. Someone bumped me and I nearly spilt some of that. So I nearly brought you guys all like a sample of that. Luckily, I didn't have to do that. But if you get a chance to go down there, it's really great down there. Some of the things that they've got happening in that central area there, it's really helping people to kind of interact. Anyway, so just on that, this really interests me. So what's happening down there, and then that's maybe kind of a bit of a segue into being able to introduce that area. Can you see what I'm kind of getting at there?
Yeah, and it gets people to get engaged as well with you, because then they start thinking, oh yeah, I went to QV the other day. Oh yeah, right. Next time I go there, maybe I'll try that Mexican place.
Exactly, so right.
It's cementing that in their mind.
Maybe the Mexican place has got absolutely stuff all to do with your project, right? Fact, maybe. But the idea is, like, it's in the vicinity of, and you're finding a way that is going to help people connect with place or connect with the project through what I would just call like sort of personal or people or humanistic kind of circumstances. People all go out to eat. So that's something which we know that everybody shares. And so that's what makes a great story as an opener.
Yes. That's a really good piece of advice there, Shah. Hey, I just want to know, what did you struggle with as a student when giving presentations?
I love this question. One of the things that I really struggled with is basically falling into this trap of starting from the very beginning of your experience about your project. So
Right.
if I was to put that into a sentence, I bet you so many of you out there have heard this one. When somebody stands up, and I kick myself if I ever did this, but when you stand up and you go, when I first got down to the site, the first thing I noticed was blah, 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 blah. I don't care. It's just so boring. I don't want to know about your whole history of your life with this, like when you first got down to the site. That's the thing I personally struggled with for so long, and I guess if I was to looking back now and distilling it down, it's about avoiding getting to the real crux of what it is that you're talking about. And it's this sort of, in a sense, it's almost like the storytelling thing that I was alluding to before, but in a much more kind of boring fashion. People are there to find out, what are you here to offer us? What's the amazing thing that you have discovered that happens in the world, whether it's a problem or whether it's an amazing existing set of circumstances, and what are you doing about that? So one of the things that that I struggled with the most was in myself or listening to other people present was this long and dawdling, winding road towards getting to what we're talking about. People love to get straight to the point, tell us the amazing thing that you've discovered, give us a little brief taster of it, and then now let's go into your thought process and your solution and everything that's kind of behind that. There's no real need, I suppose, to go into massive detail about each and every set of circumstances around your solution, but certainly come out with a really punchy thing and say, hey, if we all do this, this is going to happen. And here's one example of that in action that I've done myself, and I'm going to talk to you about that one thing in detail. I've also got a whole bag of other examples back here. If you want to know about those later, we can talk about those at question time.
Yeah. So that's like leading with your passion, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, I think that, again, it comes down to like being yourself. Sometimes we can worry so much that what we're saying is like not the right answer or not what we should be saying. But I think it's so important, and one of the things that I love and I admire so much about watching people who are still studying in that amazing creative environment at university is just like this passion that comes out where they really can see and feel how things in the world could be better and how they can change things to be for the better and how they've noticed stuff because they're so observant, because they're not so caught up in working in some 9-to-5 job yet. Like they have the opportunity to really look at what's going on. And I don't think you ever need to be afraid of that. You don't ever have to come out and kind of pretend already like you're the boring 9-to-5er who's got to have all the right answers in a really succinct fashion. I reckon just go for it. If you've seen something that's amazing and you really feel that that's an important thing, I think you can help other people to see and feel that with you. There's no need to kind of, I suppose be really kind of, I guess, again, I pull it back to where I sort of keep getting back to, which is like kind of pretending to be what you think you're supposed to be. I think that's the last thing you need to do. You need to speak from the heart, call it how you see it, and don't be afraid. And that I think people feel your passion. It's exactly the same scenario as when you're just talking to a bunch of your mates. You don't hold back. You're happy to scream and shout and say like, this is what I reckon it is, and everyone else is, this or that or whatever. They don't get it, and this is what's really going on. I have no qualms at all in encouraging people to allow that side of themselves to come out in their presentations.
I love that. It's so inspiring. It's really, really great. That's something that I really try and promote on the podcast is to, just really think about why you're doing this. What do you love about architecture or landscape or fashion?
Yes.
Or whatever it is you're studying, and really let that shine through in your presentation. And I think I heard somewhere that passion is the only thing that sells anything. So if you want to get people to buy into what you're saying and really catch on to your idea and believe in what you've got to offer, show them why you're so passionate about it.
Absolutely. And do you know what? If I can just add here, the reason why I absolutely passionately agree with what you've just been saying, and the reason is this, and this, if you don't mind, like this kind of ties in a little bit with where I'm kind of coming from in my own journey and with my own project that I've got going on with the 30-Foot Gorilla podcast. The world is changing. The world has changed. The world is continuing to change. And one of the things, Christina, that I think is that later on, when you get through your coursework and when you get out and emerge into the world and there's nowhere to hide, I suppose, anymore, and you're faced with it, I really believe that the whole model and the whole way that we are going about things as time moves on is changing. I honestly believe that the idea of having a huge architectural firm or design agency that has a massive floor with lots of people at desks all working on these big projects, I think that's all changing. I think that as time goes on, people are going to be working in smaller and smaller groups. They're going to be individuals like freelancers, and they're going to team up and collaborate with other freelancers on projects on a project by project, skills needed, kind of attitude towards certain things basis. So it's really important that you understand where you fit and what you think, because when the time comes and you're working on that amazing new sort of Fed Square type project and you've got your own take on how public life should be, or the new massive skyscraper commercial building, and you've got your own take on what a huge architectural masterpiece kind of needs to be that represents what it is to be commerce in a capitalist society or whatever. If you've got your own take on those things, people will gravitate towards you because of that. It's the people who are sort of mediocre, sitting on the fence, not really wanting to commit or make a real statement about who they are and what they believe in. Those people are going to be left by the wayside. And I feel at the moment those people are the ones that are working in these huge firms with lots of people everywhere, and like, you know, big sort of shop floors with team leaders and all that kind of thing. That whole model is going to be redundant in the future. That's my personal opinion. So I think that makes it even more important to start to cultivate really what do you believe in? What is your, I suppose, let's call it brand of architecture or brand of design? And I think stick with that because it will definitely serve you well in the future once you're out of there.
Well, I hope you're all really inspired, everyone listening. Don't be afraid to be yourself and be your own brand, essentially, and stand up for what you believe in. That's so
Absolutely.
cool. Oh man, I could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
But we do have to wrap up the interview though, Shah. But thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's been absolutely amazing. You've offered some really, really great nuggets of advice, and I hope everyone listening takes that on board.
That is my pleasure, and you keep up the good work. You're doing a great thing, and I'm sure, and I know that you're helping so many people. Keep it up.
Thanks. Well, just quickly before you do go, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Oh, okay. Yep, that's easy. Just head over to 30 is in the number 30footgorilla.com.
Okay.
Check it out there.
And can they find you in iTunes?
You can find me, you can find me on iTunes, you can find me on Stitcher, and you can find me on the website. I also have a Facebook page, which is Facebook/30footgorilla. And anyone who'd like to email me, anyone who'd like to be involved, give me a yell. Love to hear from
you. Isn't he lovely? He's got so much good stuff to share. I'm so glad he was able to join me on the podcast. And I really hope you got something out of it as well. Be sure to check out his website, 30footgorilla.com. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And that brings us to the end of episode 19. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed it. Now remember, if you want to receive weekly tips on how to become a presentation ninja and really hone those skills, join the other awesome members of the Speak Studio and just go to designdrawspeak.com/studio. It's free and easy. I hope you have a fabulous week. Take care. And until next time, this has been Presentation Skills for Design Students, helping you become a confident, creative communicator.